This is The Wealth Puzzle with Michael Mansfield from the Lynn Group. When a part of your financial strategy is out of tune, your long-term goals, your retirement savings, and your legacy can all suffer. With many years of experience in the financial industry, Michael provides his clients and prospects with the information they need regarding Social Security, retirement income planning, wealth management, and much more. Listen in as we address your financial concerns and provide helpful solutions to put you on the path to achieving your retirement goals. And now, here is The Wealth Puzzle with Michael Mansfield.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Mike Mansfield with the Lynn Group. It's going to be a solo flight today. Tana is not here. Unfortunately, one of our kiddos is having some reasonably bad health issues that required surgery. So she is out of town and she's a little busy. So if you've been trying to get a hold of her, please be a little bit patient at the moment. Lot to talk about. Things are going wild right now. The title of this show, CPI to the rescue, inflation data came out today. But really, there's bigger things that are maybe being predicated in the markets. I mean, for one, I sit here watching the news all day long. I've got CNBC running on the TV while I'm sitting here talking to you guys. And guess what? The reality is in a week or two, there's been negligible, if any, coverage on the further wars breaking out in the Middle East, the chaos there, the cost of the United States government. Pretty benign in the world of investments. At the same token, a couple of weeks ago, we had Fed President Powell speak. And what did he do? He came out a little dovish at first, saying, yeah, we're not going to do a rate increase. Now, this was a little misleading. This was confusing for a lot of people because if you go back a week prior to that, we had third quarter GDP come out. I'm going to take this off the screen. I'm still busy talking. We had third quarter GDP come out. And it comes out at 5%. It's the hottest quarterly reading for GDP, gross domestic product, in 10 years since 2014. Obviously, there were some big numbers during COVID in 2021, but that was all kind of fake stuff. So this was the first big GDP reading. Now, it's funny because fast forward a week to when the Federal Reserve did not raise interest rates. Remember, the Feds are worried that the economy is too hot. They're worried that things are going too well, and they have to cool things down. And so if you just had the best quarterly GDP read, in a decade, you would think the Feds would be scared to death of that and they'd be raising rates dramatically, saying, "Oh my gosh, we gotta stifle this down. What are we gonna do?" And they didn't. Well, why? If you go in, see now, when we got this reading in the beginning of the month on GDP, President Biden came out and he did the hallelujah pat on the back thing. Oh, look, the economy's on fire. We're crushing it. Yeah, man. Come on, man. That's maybe a better thing to say. And when you read the report, it's kind of shocking and a little concerning. In the third quarter, the largest creator of jobs was the federal government. Now remember, the federal government's broke. The federal government has no money. The federal government has spending issues. So here we have the federal government being that artificial creator of jobs and productivity in the economy. Number two, a massive line item was companies building inventory. So people are so scared of future inflation that they're buying stuff now. They're war chesting things now. So they're buying, building their inventories up. That's a problem for two reasons. One is, well, you're robbing from future GDP reports by them proactively purchasing that stuff now. But more laughable, the largest purchaser in the third quarter of inventory was the government. Once again, the government's broke. The government has no money. The government's got to use the giant credit card. And so the government did all the heavy lifting in the third quarter to get this artificially high number. And so fast forward a week to Powell not raising rates, he's sitting there being like, yeah, I know the administration can say this was a hot number and the economy's doing well, but let's all be honest with ourselves. It's a little scammy because it's just the government overspending money again. So he kind of poo-pooed that report. He didn't raise rates. That kind of got the ball rolling positively. You fast forward to last week, the market was pouty for a couple of days because Powell came out and spoke and said, oh, I don't know, maybe we haven't done enough to stifle inflation. What are we going to do? And then you fast forward to today, right? And that's what this little chart was. I'll pop up on here. So look, this morning, inflation data comes out. The consumer price index month over month rose at 0.04%. So in the eyes of the headlines, that's called zero. They just round down, right? And so it's a zero. They were expecting a 0.1% increase. This is favorable, means inflation is growing at a slower pace. To put that in perspective, let's see, the month prior grew at 0.4%. A month prior to that, it grew at 0.6%. So this was certainly the lowest read in the last few months. Obviously, this points towards the idea that the Federal Reserve is likely not to need to raise rates more to be as aggressive, because obviously their job function here is to try to stifle inflation without causing a recession, which seems a little sketchy at best. Anyways, fast forward here. Let's see what happens. So all of a sudden, all the betting odds, all the probabilities of when the Feds are going to start cutting rates. So at the moment, the Fed funds rate lives between 5.25% and 5.5%. It's the highest rate like in 20 years. And so let's see, for December, there's a 95% chance the Feds aren't raising rates. So everybody's betting the Feds are done. You go to January, there's a 95% the Feds aren't raising rates. So once again, they're done. Then you go to March next year. So this is looking at when do these Fed meetings happen? When do people think rates will start to come down? All of a sudden now there's a 30% chance that Feds have cut rates by March. But then you go to May, and that's where it really starts to shift heavily. And we see here that, let's see, 50. So there's like a 60, plus percent chance at the moment that the Feds have cut rates by May of next year. I think that this is a political thing too. I think that Biden doesn't have a ton to run on at the moment. The economy's a mess. The debt's a mess. The border's a mess. Foreign affairs are an absolute mess. Education's a mess. Pick your poison. Every government policy that we're in charge of is a complete mess. And so he could really benefit from the stock market grinding higher, because that will help unions, that will help pension funds, that will help a lot of that voting base that historically has worked well for him. So if he can do some winking and nodding over to Powell and say, hey man, if we could get those rates cut by at least mid-year next year, that'll give a little bit of time for them to work into the economy. That should help the stock market swoon higher. I'll be hailed a hero that the economy's up and pensions are more robust and blah, blah, blah. So feels like that's kind of what's shaping up here at the moment. Now it's funny because let's go back a day. Right. I've talked about the debt a lot in the past. In fact, I know that I promised doing a GDP, debt to GDP thing, and I'm working on it. The problem is Tana's son is the one who kind of helps me with those charts, and he's unavailable at the moment. So I'm getting back to it on you. But just yesterday, what happens? Moody comes out in the morning, Moody's, so U.S. credit, and they cut the outlook. And they cut it from stable to, what do they call it, negative? I don't know where it is. It's in here somewhere. I don't know. I think they said negative was the word they used. But the reason that they focus on this is, why would our debt be negative? And that's because we have a large fiscal deficit. Our spending is completely out of control. We're constantly going into the government's going to shut down mode, which happy Friday, this Friday the 17th is the next government shutdown mode that we have. Which maybe I'll talk about in a second. And so this downgrades. And what's funny is the market doesn't even care. Like, everybody's so over it. Everybody knows the government is a spending nightmare. Everybody knows our fiscal policy is just a clown car going towards a cliff at the moment. And no one even cares. I mean, another perfect article. The Treasury is to borrow almost $800 billion just to get to the last 3 months of the year. That's how much money we're spending and borrowing above and beyond what we're bringing in tax revenue. It's just 3 months. I mean, it's incredible. We spend $2 trillion more than we bring in at the moment. It is out of control. At the same token, some positive things are shaping up. I was looking at the earnings reports. Earnings are very important. There's two things that you look at with earnings rolling in. And so at the moment, pretty much round up, almost all companies have reported earnings for the third quarter. And at the moment, we have year-over-year earnings growth of about 4%, which is good. We haven't had a positive earnings year-over-year quarter in a year or two. And so it's nice to see some growth. I think what's paltry and pathetic is, like, here's a FactSet. They do all the earnings analysis, and they're saying, hey, look at this. 82% of companies that have reported above estimates, which is higher than normal. Well, if I said that all you had to do to have a successful day today was to open one of your eyeballs, and you opened both of them, guess what? You just beat estimates. You just blew it out of the water. You're doing phenomenal. And that's the problem that we have in the financial industry right now, is analysts have set the bar so low that it's super easy for all these companies to clear that hurdle. So yes, we have positive earnings year over year, quarter over quarter, which is fantastic. The surprises, it's very benign to me. I mean, if you're only growing at 3% in the course of a year, that's not, we'll say, dramatic enough to say, oh, look at all these positive surprises. But earnings are projected to, grow into 2024. And so that's why, in part, we're optimistic that with Fed rate cuts, growing earnings kind of stuff, that we're going to likely see, the market probably grind a lot higher than what it's doing at the moment. Fast forward to what I was saying just a minute ago, we do have a government shutdown shaping up here at the end of the week. They're working on it. I find it a fascinating issue. So right now, the new guy, Johnson or whatever his name is from Louisiana, he's trying to do something that hasn't been done in a long time, and that's actually have a conversation about a budget and break it into different pieces and make people vote on those different pieces of the budget instead of doing these giant omnibus packages that are just endless spending and endless chaos. He's saying, let's not do that. So at the moment, he's pushing for a continuing resolution to kind of get a lot of this conversation into January so that they have time to talk about different budgetary items and negotiate on pieces of it, which would be very valuable, I think, to the finances of this country at the moment. From what I understand, from what I've read in the last 24 hours, is every Democrat is saying they will not vote for that. I find that confusing technically because there's no spending cuts in this continuing resolution. The spending was actually done by the 100% Democratic Congress, Senate, and House a year ago when all this was put in place. So why do they hate it? If this is the spending they wanted and we're not asking for any cuts at the moment, why would no Democrat vote for it? It's because no Democrat and no Republican, to be fair, none of these people want to be on the record for admitting to how they think underlying spending should go. They just said, just give us trillions of dollars and we'll figure it out later. So that's going to be a chaotic mess. Obviously, that's going to probably pout into the stock market short term. In the big scheme of things, government shutdowns, if they happen or not, really have no negligible, measurable impact on GDP. So it's not something that would get me out of bed as a source of concern at the moment. There's a lot more fear mongering over that stuff. So anyways, just wanted to kind of give an update on things. Obviously, there's just a lot going on in the world. Hopefully next week, Tana will be back in action and we can have a much happier temperament here on the show. But anyways, I appreciate people logging in and spending your time to listen to what we have to say. If you have questions, thoughts, concerns, curiosities, anything, feel free to call the office, 805-500-7035. You can certainly visit our main website at thelindgroup.com. Lind is Lynd. If we don't see you or talk to you prior to that, happy Thanksgiving. Take some time to be thankful for something. Take some time to be loving to a family member. And everybody have a great day.